Hello there, welcome to this video guys. Today I'm talking about a beautiful essay in grade 11 that is sharing tradition. I believe everybody will enjoy listening to me. I will be giving you answers to some crucial questions. So guys, let's get going. Here I want everybody to see these slides. So what you can see is the title of the essay, Sharing Tradition, and the writer is Frank Lapena, right? So more about this writer can be clarified by this picture. What you can see guys, here you can see a beautiful picture of the Native American people. Native American people are also called the American Indian people, and Frank Lapena, the writer of this essay, belongs to this, let's say, a particular tribe of Native American people. Such a writer has written this essay sharing tradition. So in this essay, Frank Lapena basically talks about the importance of transforming information of our culture from one generation to another generation. Clear guys, the first thing we got to know is all about tradition. So tradition is a custom or maybe behavior or cultural pattern that comes to the present from the past. Clear? So there is no confusion guys. All right. So about the author, so Frank Lapena was Native American writer. He was professor of art and he was really interested in revival of the Native American art and tradition. So that's what we come to know about the writer, right? So moving ahead, so you can see the picture of the writer, right? So he was also a painter, an artist, a polymath, right? So very talented personality, and yeah, you can see the picture of yeah a tribal hate, right, of Native American people. And what is this essay all about? Let me give you the core idea. You can have an eye onto this slide, right? Just see the essay Sharing Tradition is about passing on culture and values from generation to generation through oral tradition. So here is a question. What is oral tradition? Simple, put simply, right? Oral tradition is a practice of telling stories of life. Clear? Native American people used to tell their children all about their culture and life. So they used to inform their children not by writing but just by storytelling, and that practice of storytelling is called oral tradition. I believe I clarify this thing, right? So, what is culture? Here is another question. Guys, simply you can say culture is a set of language, clothes, religion, lifestyle, work, etc. Right? Our culture is very important for us because it forms our identity. It helps us identify ourselves. Clear? So our culture comes through our tradition, right? It is very important for us. And in this essay, the writer talks about the culture or the revival of the Native Americans' culture, right? So by telling stories to the people of new generation. Clear? Now, moving ahead, right, on the slide, the main points of this essay can be summarized this way. The very first one, oral tradition is important in maintaining the values of culture. The writer goes on saying that, yeah, so by telling stories, we can continue the cultural practices to our new generation. It can be an important tool to educate our children, right? So, certain part of education can also be done by telling stories. So, guys, remember the time that you used to listen to the moral science stories, right? So long ago, maybe like many years ago, I mean, right? So, second thing he says here is that not all the elderly people are capable of fulfilling the role of elders. There can be very old people, they may have beautiful memories of their childhood past, but they don't feel like sharing such like experiences and memories with the new generation. So when they die, they take their memories along with them, right? They may be very old, but they may not share the experiences with others, particularly with their grandchildren, right? Therefore, some of the elderly people are to be blamed for not passing the cultural practices to the new generation. So, guys, in the essay, Lapena also blames the young people, right? Look at point number C, right? He blames the young people for not taking an interest in listening to the stories their elders would like to tell them, right? Therefore, being this the reason, there is likely to be a kind of cultural gap, right? Elderly people not taking it as their responsibility to pass the cultural practices to the new generation, and the new generation thinking that it is the responsibility or is the matter of the old people to know about such things, right? Therefore, there is likely to be a kind of gap that we call the cultural gap, right? So look at point number D. Part of tradition is tied to natural world which is being destroyed. Do you know one thing, guys? Like when our nature gets deteriorated or we go on exploiting our nature, then we cannot fully follow our culture, right? Because culture and nature they go together. If one gets completely deteriorated and we cannot, take for example, in the past, right? Our great grandparents they used to drink water directly from a fountain or from a river. Now, because the river and other sources of water have been heavily contaminated, and we cannot practice that culture any longer today. So, take for example, living in a mud house is a dream now. We cannot make those like houses out of stones and wood, right, and timber, right? So, because there has already been a massive deforestation. So even if we would like to live in those like houses, it's not possible today because the nature has been exploited, right? So point number E here, Lapina goes on criticizing the modern readers for not truly representing or writing. Giving the information about the culture, right? So what do the modern researchers do? Like either they are doing the primary research or the secondary research, like secondary reason is secondary data, like they do not completely write the truth about the life of traditional people, right? Their data or information might be misleading, right? They are modern people, and when they go to the elderly people and they ask them some questions to answer, the elderly people, common people, may not understand those like questions and they might give them random answers. So the things written by modern researchers may not be true to real life situations. This is what he goes and sign, and thereby takes place the, let's say, misrepresentation of cultural practices, right? This is his next point. And the next part of the essay, the writer Frank Lapena also tells us that oral tradition is different from literary tradition. Oral tradition is mainly about storytelling, right? Narrating the stories by grandparents to the grandchildren. So they tell the real stories, they do not make any kind of manipulation. But what happens in literature? The stories, right? The poems and the plays that are written down, right? They are completely written down and they come in the form of writing, and there might be the manipulation of the original stories because writers they use their creativity and imagination and they present the things, and those presentations could be far from real life situations. So guys, there is a big difference between oral tradition and literary tradition, says the writer. All right. The next point he makes is that artists can visualize the stories and characters and present them in a realistic way. He tells the artist to make a realistic representation of the culture and tradition without much distortion of the reality, right? And finally, the last point of this essay, tradition can be a source of inspiration for an artist, right? When artists see a typical, let's say, culture, right, and or let's say cultural practice, and they feel like presenting that thing in a piece of painting or maybe in a piece of poem, right, or any other form of art, right? So that's how, yeah, tradition can be a source of inspiration for an artist. So this is the last point, guys. So now let's see some of the questions that are given in the book, right? The very first question is, according to Lapina, what is the importance of the oral tradition? It can be answers like this. Come on. According to the writer, oral tradition is important for passing on the information about culture from one generation to another. Stories can beautifully inform children about their ancestral life. They can be inspired, encouraged, and moralized by storytelling. Likewise, oral tradition can partly be used in educating our children. This is the first answer. Look at second question. Who preserve and pass on the oral tradition? In the essay, La Pena implies that everyone is responsible for preserving the oral tradition. However, the elderly people are more responsible for it. They have depth of knowledge about culture and tradition, so they have to take it as their responsibility. 8. The young people should also take an interest in listening to the elders. Right? Look at this third question. What is the danger of not passing on information from generation to generation? According to Lapena, if we do not pass on the information from generation to generation, we might forget our culture. We tend to create a cultural gap. This way, we tend to lose our identity. Consequently, we might face identity crisis. We might make a big material progress, but we feel hollow inside if we don't know our people and can't belong ourselves with them. Right? We can say like this. So guys, I think here I'm just giving you the main part of the answer. Actually, you got to write two paragraphs, so 75 words, including the introduction paragraph. In my previous videos, I have clarified the way to write the introduction paragraph, right? So moving ahead, look at this question. What is the difference between oral tradition and literary tradition? The writer says that oral tradition is different from literary tradition. Oral tradition is mainly about telling stories. It is never written down. There are real stories and they directly come from parents and grandparents. Such stories truly represent the life and culture. On the other hand, literary tradition is more about creating literature. Quite a lot of literature is written down. It involves the creativity and imagination of the writers. So literary tradition may not truly represent life and culture. Very simple, guys. I believe you have understood. Look at the last answer before we wrap up for today. Alright, how does Lapena establish a relationship between art and the oral tradition? In the essay, Lapena establishes the relation between art and oral tradition by saying that oral tradition can inform new generation about the art. Elderly people can tell their children about different forms of art that existed in their life, culture, and society. Stories of struggle and hardship can be transformed in beautiful paintings, sculptures, poems, and poetry. Likewise, the stories of the life of ancestors can inspire the artists. Thus, oral tradition can be a medium for creating arts. Thank you very much for watching me, and don't forget to follow me, guys. Okay, bye bye for this time. See you in the next video. Have a wonderful time ahead.